Hi everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel, and this is the first video of our Java tutorial series. And in this video I'm gonna introduce you to Java, where we will learn what is Java, where you can apply Java, some few key concepts used in Java, and we'll also see a simple Java program. So let's get started. First of all, Java is a high-level class-based object-oriented programming language. This language was designed and developed with the write once, run anywhere philosophy, which we're gonna say in a short what it means. And it was developed back in 1995 at Sun Microsystem, but right now it is owned by Oracle Corporation. So what does this philosophy of write once, run anywhere mean? Let's take an example of how a C or a C++ source code is compiled. Now when you write a C++ code and compile it into machine code, that machine code can work only on a specific platform. Let's say I'm in Windows. I've compiled my C++ source code to machine code. Now that machine code can only work on Windows machine. If I take that machine code to another platform like Mac OS, it cannot work. I need to recompile the source code again into a Mac OS specific machine code. You see? So that means that if I am changing platforms, I need to compile this source code again. Now, how does Java tackle that? For Java, when you write your source code and compile it, instead of compiling it directly to a machine code, it is compiled into a bytecode. Now, this bytecode can run on any machine which has Java Virtual Machine. So, if I have written this source code in Linux and compiled it in Linux, and take this source code into a Windows machine, provided that Windows machine has JVM, it will work. If I take the same source code, the same bytecode into Mac OS machine, and provided that Mac OS machine has JVM, it will work. Now, what does this JVM does? Now, JVM stands for Java Virtual Machine. Now, what JVM does is that it takes this bytecode and it interprets it into a machine specific code. So if it is on Windows, the JVM interprets this bytecode to Windows machine code. If I take this bytecode into Mac OS, the JVM in Mac OS will take this bytecode and interpret it into Mac OS machine code. Remember that for applications to show result on the screen, they must interact with the operating system, and the operating system works with the CPU, and the CPU can only understand machine code, and the machine code is the bunch of ones and zeros. Okay, now let's see what exactly is this JVM. Let's start with an analogy. Suppose you want to build an aeroplane. Now you need at least tools to build the plane and the runway, okay, where you can test the plane. Think of the JDK, which is another keyword. Now JDK stands for Java Development Kit, which you are gonna see more about it in a short. Now think of it as the tools that you need to build the plane, and the JVM as the runway or the airfield where you will test the plane. Now how do they fit together based on the in Java? Now how do they fit all together? JDK is the complete toolbox that you need to write and build Java application. Now JDK is the toolbox that comes with the compiler, it comes with the JVM, it also comes with the libraries. Now if you want to build Java application, you need this JDK. Now the JDK, as we've seen, it comes with the compiler, it comes with the JVM, and it also comes with the library. Now the compiler compiles your source code to the bytecode, and then the JVM is used to interpret that bytecode to machine code. And libraries are some pre-written code that are used to perform common tasks like displaying text on a screen, connecting to a database, things like connecting to a network, and others. Now we are gonna see more about libraries in the upcoming sections of the videos, but don't worry about it right now. But before that, let's see where Java is applied. First of all, Java is used in Android development. It is also used in big data companies like Apache Hadoop and Apache Spark. It is also used in web development companies like Netflix, Spotify, LinkedIn, and some parts of Amazon use Java as their backend. Also, you can use Java in game development. For example, the first version of Minecraft was written in Java. Now let's see some few key concepts that you need to understand before getting started with Java. We have a class here, and the class is a blueprint that is used to create objects. Remember that every Java program must have at least one class. This is very important. Now, an object is an instance of a class. That means that a class is used to build object. Let me give you an analogy. Suppose we have a car factory here, like Mercedes, and Mercedes factory has got something like the blueprint or the skeleton that shows how the car looks like. It has some logo that looks like a star. It has some four wheels. It is a sedan type. Okay, you see, those are the major characteristics of a Mercedes car. Now, with that blueprint, you can build multiple cars. You can build a car and paint it red. You can build another car and paint it blue. You can build another car and paint it green. But the underlying structure of these different cars all direct to the blueprint. Okay, so even if the car is red, you can still tell it is a Mercedes. Even if a car is blue, you can still tell that is Mercedes. Now, why is that? Because the skeleton itself, or the blueprint that is used to build those cars, is the same. Now, that is the relationship between a class and an object. A class can build multiple objects, but don't worry about classes and objects right now. We are going to cover them later in the object-oriented programming section. This is how you define a class in Java. So you start with the class keyword, then the class name, and remember it must start with a capital letter. And as I've said, every Java program must have at least one class. That means that every code that you write must be inside these curly braces. The next keyword is method, and a method is a block of code that performs a specific task. Like you can write a method that adds two numbers. You can also write another method that print messages on the screen. If you have come from other programming languages, maybe you've worked with functions. Now, a method is typically a function, but the difference between a method and a function, there's no difference. Only that methods are functions inside classes, but they are all functions, okay? Let's see the structure or the syntax of a method. So we start with the return type. So like for this one, you can add two numbers here and return the result, which can be of type integer. So you can write integer here, the method name, maybe add two numbers, and then you pass those numbers in here. But remember that parameters are optional. You don't need to pass them here. And then inside these curly braces, that is where you put your code. Now, for it to work, you must call this method. So how do you do it? To call a method, you start with the method name and then you put the parentheses. So when you do that, this one will be called and it will be executed. Another keyword that you need to understand is the access modifiers, and there are three types of access modifiers. We have private, public, and protected, and you can use these to mark method and classes. So when you mark a class public, that means you can access it from anywhere. When you mark a class private, that means you cannot access it. That is private. When you mark it protected, you can only access it in a specific package. But don't worry about these access modifiers right now, because we'll cover them later in the object-oriented section. These access modifiers are used in classes and methods. Now, as you can see here, we have another keyword, which is static. Methods or variables that have this static keyword here belong to a class rather than an object. But still don't worry about that. You will understand it later. Then we have another keyword here, which is void. And what void means, it means that this method is returning nothing. Remember I told you you have to state the return type of a method. But if your method is not returning anything, you can just state it as void. Let's bring all of this together, the classes, the access modifiers, and the methods to build our Java program. First of all, we start with the class, which is this one. And remember that every Java program must have at least one class. Then inside this class, you put your code here. So we can put method, variables, and other stuff. And you can see here we have a special type of method called main. Now, every Java program must have this method, because this method, this is where the execution of your program starts, and you don't call this method. This method is called by the JVM, okay? So you don't call this method, you just write it the way it is, and it accepts some parameters, which is an array of strings, and inside this parenthesis here, or curly braces, that is where you put your code. But still, don't worry about this very much, because you are gonna cover it and implement it in lead programs. Now let's see some naming conventions in Java. We have the Pascal case, which is used in naming classes. That means you start with a capital letter like this one. Then we have the camel case, which is widely used in many programming languages, where you start with a small letter for the first word, and then the preceding words you start with the capital letters, and you can use it to name methods, variables, and packages. Then we have the snake case, which is not widely used. You can use it to name constant, finals, like finals or static. Now that you've seen the structure of a simple Java program, how do you print out data to the console? You use this method here, or this block of code. So you start with the system.out.println, which can be used to print text on the console. And here we have the system part, which is a built-in class in Java. Remember, in the earlier sections of this video, we talked about libraries that come with the JVM. Now, those libraries are like this one. You see, you don't write this one yourself. It comes pre-written, so you just use it. And this is a system. It's a built-in class in Java that provide access to your computer resources like your console. Then we have the out here, which is a static object within the system class. And then we have the print line here. This is a method because it ends with the parenthesis. Now, this method belongs to the out object, and to access something inside, maybe I want to access the out object which is inside the system class, I use dot. So system dot out means that I want to access out object which is inside the system class. And then when you come to this print line, it says I want to access the print line method which is inside the out object. Okay, so don't get confused about these dots. Now this method is used to print out text on the console. There are two types of printing out data. The first one is the print line. So print line like this one. So this one will print the string and then move to a new line. And then we have another one which does not have the line at the end. So we have system out print, which is used to print the string on the same line. We also have another one called printf, but we are not gonna cover that for now. Let's see how these two works. If I want to print this on the console, I write hello here. So this one will print here and then move to a new line. Remember, it is a print line. Then we come here, print 1, 2, 3, move to a new line, print this empty string, move to a new line, print Java, then move to a new line. But for the print part, there is no moving to a new line. It is all printed in the same line. In fact, if it finds this empty string, it will just skip it because there is nothing there. Okay, so that is the difference between print line and print. Finally, before we end this section, I'm gonna talk about the relationship between classes, method, and something else called packages. If you write a file like hello.java, it can have multiple packages, and a package, a single package, can have multiple classes, and then a class can have multiple methods. So that means that one file can have multiple packages, and one package can have multiple classes, and one class can have multiple methods. So that is the relationship between packages, classes, and method. Now in the next video, we are gonna install JDK, or the Java Development Kit. We're also gonna install the IDE, or Integrated Development Environment, for us to start writing Java applications or Java programs in our computers. So if you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe, share it with your friends, and hit that like button.